I'm going to go back to my original question because I want to get the Senate perspective, Vi, if we could. House passed a one-year budget, but there's news that they want to, in the Senate, want to pass a two-year budget. Your thoughts on this?
Well, the Senate majority, the Republican Party, they intend to put out a two-year budget proposal in a couple of weeks. The truth is that the Senate probably has more information than the House had when they were doing their budget hearings and putting their budget together. We still, none of us, have as much information as we'll have in the last couple of weeks of April and beyond. And so there's nothing magic about a two-year budget other than tradition, really. So 1 year, 2 year, a lot of it depends on how much information we have and how much trending information, revenue projections, and those kinds of things that are very important in putting together, building a budget. And depending on where we are by the end of the session, that will determine whether it needs to be a 1 year or a 2 year budget, I think.
Yeah, and in terms of a 2 year budget, effects on the education funding, considering what's going on with that right now. Peggy, can you speak to that?
Sure. Just to kind of follow up, we did a 1 year budget because, as Vi said, we only had a little bit of information, and we didn't want to make promises that we couldn't keep, and we wanted to be able to be realistic. And we know that we're going to have to come back in 2010, and we all hope that we're going to have a little more income. The economy is recovering, and we would be able to restore some budget cuts, or we're going to even maybe make more. So it's not that big a deal to be able to come back and do that. Regarding the education funding, we did the best we could, which was a whole lot better than what the governor proposed, as you heard earlier, just flatlining, which means it's going to take money out of the classroom. And this governor keeps saying, you know, we've got to put more money in the classroom, but his budget was going to take money out of what was going to be able to be provided for the students. So we said we're going to try to give at least a 2% increase average, and again, hold people as harmless as possible. And again, to educate our children, we are committed to that.
Switching to another topic, I want to talk about the unemployment fund. I know Stan and Mr. Berman were just talking about that as well. Vi, can you give me your perspective of really the situation that we are in right now?
Well, we're in a terrible situation right now. A few years ago, of course, we had a surplus in the trust fund, and we lowered the premium that employers pay, and we raised the benefits that workers get, and as a result, you can't do that very long in your own checkbook before it's out of balance, and basically it's broken, and it's broke, and so we have to do something to fix it. But what's very important, I think, is that everybody's going to have some pain and everybody's going to have some gain in this process, and it has to be very delicately balanced. If that balance doesn't exist, then the whole proposal will fall. And if anything sends us into special session, it will be the unemployment insurance issue, I believe. The proposal that passed out of the Senate this week, we've been doing nothing but unemployment insurance for a couple of weeks now. Yeah. The proposal that passed out of the Senate had about $300 million contributed on the employer side of the ledger, and about $540 million contributed with lower benefits on the employee side, on the worker side. To me, that's unacceptable. We have to have a balanced approach. Everybody's got to feel the pain, everybody's got to have some gain, or it's just not going to work.
And so the status of the bill, the House had a bill that we were proposing. There had been an agreement among all the leaders that not a perfect bill, not all the answers here, we don't have all the facts, kind of like the budget. So let's move forward with something. Unfortunately, some folks reneged on an agreement to let the bill move forward. So we said, listen, if we can't have an agreement and we're going to be criticized as House Democrats, you know, we can't move forward, knowing that something was going to happen. So what they've been working over in the Senate is taking a House bill, turn it into the unemployment bill. That bill has already come back to the House. In fact, today we had discussion on it. It will now go to conference committee. The conferees have already been announced.
All the conferees were appointed today.
And so they're going to start, I would think, probably even on Monday, working to come up with a solution. So House Democrats, Republicans, Senate Democrats, Senate Republicans are all going to be at the table attempting to come up with an answer.
Trying to work this out.
Absolutely. So stay tuned on what's going to happen with that.
We have a question quickly from Stan. Stan, why don't you go ahead?
Senator Simpson, a question for you. Representative Welch said that we didn't want to turn making a budget into a guessing game. With respect to whether it's a 1 year budget or a 2 year budget, How prudent would it be, with the economy still so in flux, to make it a one-year budget? Wouldn't that be a little smarter to see where the economy goes and try and do it on a year-by-year basis to see if we get out of this recession?
I think it's a different approach. I'm not going to say it's smarter or not. I think it all depends on how much information we have, and at the time the actual budget is crafted. You know, this budget process is a long process, and we take a step at a time. And you know, and as we get closer to the end of this session, when the budget is finally crafted in the conference committee, then we'll have to measure how much information we have, where the trends are going, what kind of revenue projections we've got on the table, and where this unemployment rate is going in the state, which impacts our revenue. Those kinds of things. And once we get all of that information, then we'll be able to make a judgment, I think, as to whether a 1 year or 2 year makes sense. And Representative Welch is absolutely right. The fact is, we'll be back in session next year anyway, and we will be tweaking or creating a second year of the budget, regardless of whether it's a 2 year or a 1 year budget. We'll be back making adjustments next year, and regardless.
And we're going to be meeting April 17th to get those projected revenue estimates. And again, it continues to be estimates. Unfortunately, what we know right now, right, Vi, it's not going to look real pretty, which is going to affect what's done by the Senate as far as a budget, and then the conferees will get together. We're just going to make the best of what we have.
We get new unemployment figures tomorrow, and we expect that they're going to be double-digit for
Wow.
the state, which puts us way ahead of the national average.
Well, unfortunately, we are running out of time, so I want to allow you some closing remarks if you can, about 30 seconds or less, each of you, if you would.
Well, we've got 5 weeks left to go in this legislative session, which, you know, in most arenas that doesn't sound like a lot of time. For us, it's a lifetime because we have a long way to go still on the budget. The unemployment insurance bill is now in conference committee. Those are the two big things left out there on the table. There are a lot of fights that have to be fought over not only how much money gets spent on education K-16, but how that money is distributed. So we've got a lot of discussion, a lot of debate coming up.
And we, as House Democrats, we're going to be continuing to keep our focus on job creation, education, health care, and protecting the vulnerable. And as we look at whatever comes from the Senate, those are going to be our main focus.
Okay, thanks a lot. And what does all this mean for some Hoosiers? Let's go over to Stan with more.
Thanks, Ann. Eric, I want to ask you, do you agree with Senator Simpson's assessment that the Unemployment Insurance Fund is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, challenges remaining until we get to the end of the session at the end of April?
Oh, I think she's got it exactly right. I mean, the budget is always a major challenge, but, you know, there's not that much money there. There's only so many places they can go with that. The legislature has successfully assembled a budget on time the last several sessions. There's not a lot of partisan animosity around the building, at least at this point. They should be able to get a budget done. They probably should be able to get the unemployment fix done as well, but it's a tougher hurdle for all the reasons Senator Simpson outlined. You've got Republicans in the House who were not happy about the tax increases on employers. You've got Senator Simpson and other Democrats on the other side of the halls who are not happy with what the Senate did with benefits. And somehow you've got to get those in balance in such a way that all sides can say, okay, I can hold my nose and vote for this. And that's not an easy balance to strike. You're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars, and somebody, and probably everybody, is going to have to pay for it. You say there's not a lot of partisan fighting, but it occurs to me there's fighting between the Statehouse and between the local officials. You've covered the Statehouse for a long time. Have you seen an issue like the property tax issue before, where it seems that the local mayors and the city councils appear to be on one side and everybody in Indianapolis appears to be on the other side? I don't think so. I mean, and bearing in mind that property taxes is an issue that recurs year after year after year. But yeah, that is pretty much unique in that respect. You could throw in the Kernan-Shepard reforms, which again are pretty much dead for the session at this point. That certainly set local officials against the state, and they found some allies at the state level and put that to bed. There's an eternal debate over unfunded mandates. Cities and counties are always angry when they're directed to spend on something, but the state doesn't actually provide money for it. But the one that comes back year after year in a very real way, where bills just keep coming up, is property taxes.
And so if you've got, in 30 seconds here, if you've got a magic wand and you supply a solution to one of these problems, what do you think is the quick fix to any of these, or is there a quick fix to any of these problems?
Well, I don't think there's a quick fix to any of them. As far as unemployment, I mean, everybody, both the House and the Senate, both Republicans and Democrats, know the general outline of an unemployment fix. You're going to have to increase taxes on employers, and you're going to have to bring benefits down. And the problem, again, is that delicate balance of how much to do both. You've got an $800 million hole that you're trying to close, and that's not easy even before you get into the question of, okay, who are we going to offend, who are we going to hurt?